Welcome back into the Sports Cubicle. The biggest news for the Bears this week wasn't that they beat the Lions. It's the fact that they have signed a purchase agreement to buy the Arlington racecourse land now that is available. This week, the Bears and Churchill Downs Incorporated signed a purchase and sale agreement this week for the entire Arlington Park land parcel in the village of Arlington Heights. The Bears, Churchill Downs Incorporated, and the Village of Arlington Heights released the following statements regarding the latest step of the sale property. Goes on to say, we are excited to have executed a purchase and sale agreement for the Arlington Park property, said Bears president and CEO Ted Phillips. We are grateful to Churchill Downs Incorporated for their efforts to reach this point. We also appreciate the support of Mayor Tom Hayes and the Village of Arlington. Finalizing the PSA was the critical next step in continuing our exploration of the property and its potential. Guys, we were talking about this a couple weeks ago on the show, and it was pretty much probably the best move that this franchise could make, trying to get their own stadium, just having that autonomy over the authority of the stadium, as well as trying to build a stadium that isn't going to be pieced together from an old stadium, something that can be modern, has the luxury suites, has the facilities needed to host major international events such as the Super Bowl or the Final Four. This is a big step for the Bears. I don't think it's a surprise, but at the same time, it's nice to see that the Bears are not going to mess this up at all. They really want this opportunity and they want to take advantage of it.
I would take it saying it is more of a surprise because we had Jerry Rouse on a few weeks ago. And I don't think, did anyone really think this would actually follow through? We kind of saw oh yeah, well, this is cool, but let's be real. The Bears are probably going to wind back up in Chicago. And I think it's kind of nice that, they finally put the bid in. And again, this isn't 100% official. They're not going to Arlington Heights yet. We don't know too many details. But I think this is a step in the right direction because, Paul Mercado, as you guys know, I since the Rewind Sports 60 days, I've been all about, let's just get this team to Arlington Heights. Let's get them out of Chicago. Let's get them a field, a place that actually cares about them.
It's funny, Devin, because the last time we had on Jerry on the Sports Cubicle when the transition happened, he and I were kind of going back and forth, and I've always been part of the generation of Bears fans that thought this was inevitable because we've seen the evolution of the NFL and sports and how it's become this multi-billion-dollar conglomerate, and the Bears were just a little bit behind when it came to that big boom, so they weren't able to really capitalize on what a lot of these other teams are doing right now. And Paulie brought it up in that statement that we're talking about, Final Four, Super Bowls, WrestleManias, college football championships, and you guys know better than anybody, Arlington Heights is very easy to get to from the highway. That's not going to be the case when they're building a new stadium and when all that traffic gets there, but the fact remains is it's going to be an easier stadium to get to. It's still going to have a lot of the amenities that a new kind of a new palace is going to have that we see in the NFL, and you're still going to be very close to Chicago. There's still going to be that ties to Chicago. I think this was a move that was bound to happen just because we see how the sport was going. But what I found the most interesting after all this was going on is what we saw from Mayor Lori Lightfoot as she was on WSCR talking to their morning show about kind of the negotiations or lack thereof, and the fact that the Bears went radio silent with this park district and with the mayor's office, to me shows that they weren't planning to negotiate at all. This was something they wanted to do.
It kind of makes you wonder, I don't know if this is Mayor Lightfoot's fault necessarily in terms of the negotiations falling through. I don't know if she's a victim of circumstance because of what the past situations required and the fact that maybe the Bears wanted to show that they have all the leverage against the Park District, whereas in the years past, it didn't really feel like they had much leverage against the Park District. I mean, I think the radio silence isn't so much because it was Lightfoot. I think it was so much because the Bears just really want to try and break free and do their own thing. I couldn't be happier for them in that regard, but it doesn't mean that this is going to happen right away. This is just, they've put together a bid and nothing's official yet in terms of ink to paper, signing over the land over to the Bears. There could be things that fall through. We still have to see if they're going to raise how are they going to raise the current track, and fill in the ponds in there, what the land use, bill or the land use survey is going to show. I honestly, you're expecting so many hurdles because it's the Bears, it's Illinois, it's Cook County, but at the same time, and of course, it takes time to build these massive stadiums. With the fact that I think the current lease expires in 2026, and they can buy out of it for $84 million. $84 million is a lot, but when you're talking about a stadium that might be billions upon billions of dollars, that's not that much money. And I think that's a perfect window for them to try and get everything done, to dot the I's, cross the T's, find the right company to do this, to have Ted Phillips really oversee a building project. I think just skeptically, everything's working out too good in my eyes. I think there's got to be a snag somewhere, but at the same time, you haven't seen a hiccup yet. And you've seen this team in the past just really try and retrofit something that didn't fit, a square in a round hole or whatever, square peg in a round hole. That was the last Soldier Field deal. And they had opportunities to build in Hoffman Estates where the now arena stands, or the Windy City Bulls play, or even in Aurora or Naperville. There was land this entire time. Arlington Heights just happened to fall in their lap. And I'd like to think that there's going to be hurdles because it's never really easy to follow through on something like this. But at the same time, how perfect has this worked out so far?
I mean, I think it's right place, right time, especially, reading about this. It seems like the Arlington Heights International Racetrack, you can fit Soldier Field in there and still have plenty of room. Yeah, their lease is up in 2026, and it's a $90 million fine, as I'm reading right here. But still, this is going to be bigger than Soldier Field. Like, if the Bears actually start getting good, and, as we talked about in the first half of the show, and my, problems, if we get rid of Matt Nagy, everything would just be solved. Then you can get a winning team in there, which we know winning teams equal winning fans. Like me and Paul have been to, the now guaranteed rate field, which is, seen it, dead in his tracks. But this year especially, it's hard to get sick of now. So when you have a winning performing team, you generate revenue, obviously. I mean, other than Mercado, who wants to go see the lovable losers,
Well, I mean, you can't blame me on that. And, speaking of lovable losers, as we're talking about the Bears and their connection to the city and Wrigley, and kind of how interesting it is that we see so much tribalism when it comes to these arenas, these names. You can't call them the Chicago Bears that they moved to Arlington Heights. And just really fast, I want to bring it back really fast. Paulie and Dev have been hitting on it. So 2026 is when they could break the lease. Officially, the Soldier Field lease goes until 2030. So there's, like Paul says, there's plenty of time for, bureaucracy and Chicago Mayor's Office, Cook County. And I kind of want to circle back on this a little bit about Mayor Lori Lightfoot, because, Paul, you bring it up that people are going to blame her, and I don't think this is her fault. There's a lot of faults that we could talk about the mayor of any city, but here specifically in the greatest city in the world, Chicago, IL. But, here are just some things that she brought up, and I want to see how you guys feel about this, being board ups to shows that are very much intertwined with the community. And the mayor said they actually got to come to us and tell us what they want. We can't operate in the dark. I don't have a magic 8-ball to divine what the Bears want. Come to us. Tell us what you're interested in. Let's see what we can get done, and if it makes sense for us and you, but I can't negotiate by myself. I think, Paul, you bring it up talking about what kind of hate the mayor's going to get. And then we talk about how we think the Bears are going to blunder this. Devin, you've been bringing it up, not just on the field, but how are they going to do this? Ted Phillips and the McCaskies. Are we going to get SoFi Stadium? Or are we going to get Lucas Oil Stadium? What are we going to get? How are they going to mess this up? All this is intertwined, while the mayor is going to get the brunt of this. Not the team on the field, not the ownership, not the architecture, but the mayor. How do you guys think that's going to impact her legacy as we move on?
Paul?
Well, I think she'll be a one-termer. I don't think it's totally because of this, and we're not going to get into the politics of Lori Lightfoot, but this doesn't help her. And I think to some of those maybe fringe people, that probably could have voted for her, I think you're going to have some sort of faction of voters that are going to be, well, she's the mayor that lost the Bears. They moved out to Arlington Heights. And I don't know why that would matter to certain voters. I mean, I suppose the revenue and stuff like that. But circling back to her thing about the meetings, obviously you need to have these preliminary meetings between the mayor's office and the team in order to kind of get the ball rolling. That's, that makes sense. That's in any sort of plan. You need that initial meeting. But I think the thing is she knows exactly what they're looking for. I mean, I think there's no mistake about it. And what they need is a brand new stadium. I don't think they can really rebuild Soldier Field. And I just don't think that even if they tried to slap something together with Soldier Field, they just couldn't really reach what the Bears are looking for in that regard. So now she needs to shift her focus into how to best utilize Soldier Field if the Bears leave. I don't think they're going to attract a second NFL team, although that could be something that happens. Los Angeles has two teams again after having none for a long time. Chicago did once have two teams a long time ago. And New York, of course, with the two teams sharing the same stadium, it is possible for such a large market to have two teams. And especially now is a perfect time for the city of Chicago to have a second NFL team because of how the Bears have rubbed people the wrong way, especially right now where they're at in the season. I think strike while the iron's hot. And if I was the mayor of Chicago, I would be playing that sort of card on them. Well, if they want to leave our city, if they're so ungrateful that the city that's hosted them for over 100 years is no longer that great of a place for them to play, I guess we're just going to have to find an NFL team that's worth playing at Soldier Field.
Now, I'm going to chime in there, Paul, because I've been saying for, since the start of this, Soldier Field is an effing dump. It's the only field that has, natural grass. Several players complain about playing on that. And here's the thing. If you're not going to spend the money to fix this dump, how are you going to get another team there? Maybe an XFL team, but a professional NFL team? Like, who's going to want to come here and play on this garbage field again?
And I think, Paul, you bring up the two teams, and that's my big thing about people talking about expansions, 40 teams and whatnot. I don't think Chicago with Soldier Field can have another NFL team. I think what people aren't seeing is maybe the Bears are doing something right now where they're going to host two NFL teams. It's not going to be in the lakefront, but in Arlington Heights, there will be two teams playing in that stadium because that makes the most sense. What makes more sense than 9 home games? 18 home games. And I think that's what we kind of have to see. So for the future mayor and future residents of Chicago, it's just not losing the Bears, but the potential of the NFL expanding and another team not wanting to play in the lakefront because the same problems are going to be there like Dev keeps talking about. But this brand new stadium, like we've seen around the entire league, hosting two NFL teams.
Yeah, no, I think that makes more sense too. If there will be two teams in Chicago, it would make more sense for them to share a facility. We see it in Los Angeles, we see it in New York. So there's already a template there. But at the very least, Soldier Field has the Chicago Fire. I don't think they're going to move to Arlington Heights. I don't think they can move back to Bridgeview. I think
they actually extended their contract for the Soldier Field. Paul, not to interrupt you.
And which thank you, because I wanted to hear that, and also. Soldier Field is going to miss out presumably on the World Cup in 2026. I think they've finalized where they want to play it, and Soldier Field was not one of the options. I would focus on making it a soccer stadium. I mean, obviously, the CONCACAF and MLS and all that is going to want to use the new stadium in Arlington Heights to play, a Gold Cup final or a World Cup game, something along those lines. But at the same time, you do still have that stadium on the lakefront, which, for those teams from Europe coming to visit in the summer would be such a great venue. It's not the wisest location, but at the same time, it's a very beautiful location. And in the summertime can be a great location. So I still think as long as you have Chicago Fire soccer, whatever major concerts you have going in there and whatever houses Kanye West wants to blow up in there, you still have a reasonable venue. So I don't know, any final thoughts on this move? I mean, I know there's still a lot to go in this story and we'll continue to follow it on the Sports Cubicle, but Devin, Mike, you got final thoughts?
I want to actually bring up 2 points, Paul. Your first one about soccer. Thing is, that's not exactly the most popular sport. Do you think it's going to bring in the revenue and money to keep Soldier Field as it is? And plus, as we've learned from these concerts, letting Kanye West blow up, you're destroying that field, making it even worse to play on when you got to rebuild all that stuff. So it's like, should we let this stuff keep happening or just let Soldier Field be a sports stadium, or should we turn it into like a new concert venue? Could they're
going to have to figure out a way to replace the 10 Bears games. And even then, how much were they really getting during the preseason games? So I think, now that you don't have a football season and a field that you need to totally keep but then again, the soccer season is about the same as the NFL season, or at least longer. So you don't want to have concerts in the winter. So Yeah, I think as long as you can figure out a way to replace some of that revenue, if you can add, 5 to 10 more concerts during a season, or find another, XFL team or a minor league team of some sort, that's your best bet. But yeah, you're right. I mean, otherwise they may have to renovate Soldier Field for a third time to scale it back and make it suitable for soccer as an MLS only stadium.
Right.
You got to be creative. You guys are talking about it, whether that means having to scale back, going off to Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio State, and Notre Dame and telling them, hey, come play here in Northwestern U of I. I think you got to be creative. Concerts and making it at home for, how Columbus is for United States soccer. You got to make Chicago, and whether that's international, use that lakefront, use that scenery to sell the greatest city in the world. I think you got to see what happens with landmark status. This was the big problem building Soldier Field 2. What are we going to do? What can you do? How can you adjust and build around it? And what are they going to do with the sports book? How big of a thing is that? How big of a breaking point is that for the city? Because they want to have their own sports book, and obviously these personal and private teams trying to do the same thing and cash in on that. Of course, we're going to cover it all here on the Sports Cubicle. It's a brand new frontier for fandom, for sports as a business. In the state alone, we're in our first infancy stages of sports gambling and how that's now impacting these teams. We've seen it at Wrigley. Now we're seeing it going in Soldier Field 3. So or whatever the heck the name is going to be after sponsorship. But of course, we're going to have it covered here on the Sports Cubicle. I'm super excited about this, boys, because the Bears always give us some juicy, meaty news for us to dissect here on the show.
Yeah, and if you want to give us your thoughts, you can reach out to us on Twitter and email. Our Twitter is @SportsCubicleTV. And of course, our email is sportscubicle@gmail.com. It's gonna be quite an interesting story going forward, and hopefully we'll get to see a Super Bowl in Illinois at some point before the year maybe 2030.
I haven't seen one yet, so hopefully it's Justin Fields hoisting a Super Bowl champion. Bears, Ditka, boys, it's always some fun.
Your luck. They just got to get to one first. Having it line up at their home stadium is another thing, too.
I'm done messing with you guys.
All right, back with more Sports Cubicle right after this.